I'm James Stevenson. I live in Nashville, Tennessee right now. I'm the music department chairman at Welch College. It's right outside of Nashville. I went to Stanford University, undergraduate, Southern Seminary for my master's, and got a doctorate of composition from the University of Kentucky. So I've been writing and arranging piano stuff for quite a few years, and love to do these kind of workshops and stuff. This one, a lot of times I like to show traditional contemporary styles of improvisation for chord charts and that sort of thing. What this one is actually taking just some traditional hymns and just giving you some ideas of some thinking track. Okay, some of this will be so obvious when I start on the. I'll probably start on the coronation one that I'll start with in a minute, and we'll just look through some examples of the first line of some of these, and then try to do them. Now, when we do improvisation, we're not trying to be too flashy or to show off or get too much attention, but we're trying to get rid of a little boredom. You know, sometimes you do the same thing over and over in a straight hymn. It can be sort of monotonous and everything. So a lot of times we can find some ways to do some different things. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to start with a set of variations showing you how to take the hymn Coronation and just go through it and show maybe about 20 or so different simple things that you can try on a hymn like this, or to try on any hymn. And I don't think that when I put this up here, you're going to see any big genius in it. It's probably stuff that some of you already do naturally. But sometimes just to think of some different ways to do some things is helpful. And also to think if you teach piano, sometimes the things that you do natural, maybe you haven't really thought about what you're doing. It helps to sort of just break it down and everything. Can y'all see that from here? I cannot see it real good because my eyes are getting so bad. That's my old age here. So I'm throwing my glasses. I think they don't fog up. Let's see. Okay, there it is. I see it. No, I can see it. It's better. Okay, so on this one, and let's maybe we'll open up, and as we're doing this, we'll try some of these on some different things. All right, here's the original version of this song. So it goes to the G there. So we'll just have that assumed every time there. So, all right. So the different notes. So that's a straight way through. So one of the most basic things you can do, and you probably all do this naturally, is taking the tenor note, basically, throw it in underneath your in your right hand, and doing the other everything else in octaves, the bass in octaves. So we just can have. Weirder as we go, so just bear with me here. So, all right, this next one here, all we're doing is we're throwing both hands. We're getting big octaves in the right hand, and we're squeezing in that tenor note or whatever note's left on the chord, and once again doing the big octaves in the left hand. Now, those are very basic things that you probably all sort of do naturally, and they're no big deal. Now here's some other things you can start trying. Sometimes you can invert the order of the harmony to give some variation. Now notice on this next example, what I'm showing is simply taking the tenor note and throwing it on top. Now we wouldn't usually do something like this on our first stanza, because we want to make sure that everybody is real secure on the melody and all that. But most of the time on some of these well-known hymns, they're very secure. But we still want to make sure. But for some variation where you know they've got the melody, everything's fine. So, all hell, all hell. See how a very, very simple thing is, and you can do that. Now the next one, if I did the tenor on top, how about if we switch and put the alto on top? All right, this works really easy too. So. Up at the same time. I could be interchanging, and then I'm just sort of going back and forth into different versions. All right, let's do some more, a little bit creative things that are a little bit more creative, and I've got another thing we'll look at too, and then we'll just see. All right. So here's another. Here's this top one here is a sort of a basic contemporary pattern. When we play contemporary music, really probably the most basic pattern you can use is doing the right hand in quarter notes, where we're really imitating the strum of a basic strum of the guitar, and doing the left hand acting like a bass guitar. So here I'm sort of following. All right, freely changing the voice parts, but I'm just doing a. I can take those exact same type of chords and I can just break them up. Do the top two notes and bottom note, rocking them back and forth. That's another very simple pop pattern. Oh, very simple. Okay. Well, the next one is where I'm sort of following the same sort of melodic things, but I'm just sort of doing broken chord arpeggios. Very simple broken chord arpeggios. Oh. Just a very clean and simple way. The next one, repeated chord, sort of like the top, but really on this one I'm trying to keep the chords within close proximity to each other. You'll notice the chords in this song. One particular problem we have a lot of times in worship bands, when you got two youth players who bought a guitar last week, and this week they're in your band. You know, sometimes they might have a trouble changing all those chords real quickly, and it wouldn't be real authentic to the style. So a lot of times what we can do on any hymn that has a lot of contrapuntal movement, or movement where there's a lot of changes of chords real quickly, we can slow down the harmonic rhythm. We can basically look for the big changes of the chords and say, well, I know that's the way whoever wrote it 150 years ago, but I can slow it down and just do a simple chord. So, oh. And by holding a big chord right there, what we want to do a lot of times working with a worship band is we want the guitar to have some room to do their strum pattern and not getting in the way. So we can, if we hold that down, then we can let them sort of carry it with the pattern. Or if you're doing some rhythmic things at the same time, a lot of times what you might want to do is let your piano part be in the octave higher, because the guitar's sort of ranges are right in here. So if everything you're playing is right in here, and the guitar is strumming and right in here, it can get a little bit mushy. So sometimes what it will help to do would be, and so on. So now notice on this next one, this is something we talked about the other morning when we were looking at the reading chord chart. On all of your harmony, when you find these big chords in this, you can always squeeze in the two. Squeeze in the two on almost any chord to give it a little bit of a plusher sound. So as we heard on this first one here. Now listen when I squeeze in the two. Do that little. Got that two in there. Or what works even more in a more contemporary style is to throw the two in there on these chords and leave out the three. So we've got an open two type of sound. A guitar player might call that a suspended two. That's what I prefer. A guitar player would call it a two because they can't play a real two chord because of the way their strings are built in fourths with that third up in there and everything. But sometimes you'll see it as like a G2 and in the parentheses no third. Sometimes it'll be written. So listen to the difference. So we heard the other one real plush. Now listen when I leave out that third. Now leaving out that third. The second and the third together makes it real plush, but leaving out the third and just having the two gives it this sort of open ambiance that we hear in a lot of these contemporary sounds. And all these types of things you can start doing on your when you do these hymns here. Now let's look at some more. Get a little fancier here. You know, if you wanted to be a little fancier, you could try to do some contrapuntal type stuff. Oh. Or something. You could do, you know, be fancy and try to do some things. Or you might feel like, hey, All Hail the Power is a big band jazz number or something. Oh. I would never do that. I'm just showing some different things that you can do with the same.
On number 12,
Yeah, sure.
so I do this sum, and I'm learning, trying to get better at it. I noticed you have the melody on beats 1 and 3. Do you try to keep the melody on the big beats?
Let's analyze a little bit of what I did there. So in the first part, I use some like a little neighbor tone, a little passing tone, a little neighbor back, passing, and then sort of breaking the tones of the chord, and then like almost like a changing tone, and then a little run using the scales. So there's all kinds of things. Let's think about give me a hymn. Let's just think of some ideas we can.
Holy, holy, holy.
Holy, holy, holy. Okay. What? And we got a number.
165.
There we go. We got a number and a hymn. Very great business. All right. I bet none of you know the numbers in this hymn book, though.
No, I hardly know the hymns in this book.
All right. So if I'm looking at holy, holy, holy. So let me just. I'll go through some more of these in a minute too. But let's just think. So. And then big octave. Maybe put the tenor on top here. You know, you can mix these harmonics around. Adding those twos on those chords on here. You can do, you know, you can always work what notes you have, and whatever it takes to get to the next note, you can look through a little passage. There, I'm there. So holy, 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 and then I'm there. And then I'm back at that little place there. So sometimes in your mind, if I'm trying to do like a writing sometimes, if I don't particularly feel like I've got a creative bone in my body, I try to imagine the person that I know that does. And I think, well, if I heard them doing it, what will they be doing then? You know, and I try to think, oh, okay, I'll be hearing all these, you know, these types of movement. But a lot of these things are just simple, non-harmonic tone type things you learn in classical theory: passing tones, neighboring tones, anticipations, and and when you're using harmonies and stuff, notice when I use some harmonies there, I use some sixths and I use some thirds. Those are always preferable. So, I'm using the sixth. You see how I grab those thirds? And I just use the thirds that are in the diatonic scale. And so on. All right. So looking at the let's look at some of these other examples, and then we'll come back to some other hymns too. Now I would never some of these that I'm using on here on these certain hymns, I would never, of course, use it on these big liturgical hymns. But we can do these boom chick patterns for like Victory in Jesus, and some of these Down at the Cross, or these you know, whatever. And so on, we can do that. And on boom chick patterns, what you're doing basically, and I'm going to show you some country patterns too in a minute, but on this next one. But on boom chick, basically, on the most basic, you're hitting the first beat on the tonic or whatever chord you are, and the second one go down to the fifth, which is the fourth below. It's just a basic pattern. And then the simple chords underneath. Now this next one is All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name, Floyd Kramer style. Okay, so Oh. You know, so you might want to do that. Now, when I was, it's funny when I was, when I was over my first trip when I went over to Korea, and I taught a bunch of workshops over there using a translator, and I was talking about some of these country styles with the, this kind of. What I said to them, that I said, well, hey, these this country styles like this have a lot in common with the Asian music. And they said, "Oh no, 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 no!" No. But then what I was trying to show was that a lot of these styles, they're both built on a lot of the pentatonic scale. So a lot of Asian. You hear a lot of these Asian styles, and even a lot of the way it treats chords and stuff. You hear a lot of that sort of styles. And a lot of early American music, a lot of Irish folk song music, a lot of country styles, you use these types of styles. And what I'm doing on this, because you can do this if you like to do Victory in Jesus or something. All you do is you grab either probably the fifth of the chord or the tonic. And you hold it like an octave, and you keep the top note on top like a drone, which is like a little pedal tone that repeats, and then just hits all of the pentatonic notes of the scale, and then just sort of like in a sort of a gospel sort of. Very, very easy to do because all of it sticks right in your hand. And it's sort of fun. People think, well, how do you figure that out? But just you hold the chord down, usually with the fifth on top or the tonic on top, and then let your thumb hit some of these notes, all of the notes of the pentatonic scale, and then just sort of imagine you're one of these country players. A lot of times you come off these little notes, little grace notes to sort of get that style and everything. Now don't get too honky tonk and all get some of those styles. Now this next one here is just a basic, I think this is sort of cute because I say use big octaves or whenever your organist has forgotten the harmony. So a lot of times organists like to use these creative, type harmonies, which I love. So you can always do everything in straight octaves. But also what happens is that works real nice sometimes is to play the melody octave lower in a single note. You'd be surprised how well that melody in this area will cut through it a little bit. Now it's not fun for a whole song, but do maybe half of a stanza or something. You hear that melody like that, it can go good. And sometimes what's good is to think like an orchestrator when you're using these different levels of where the octaves are. And notice if you were sitting in with the orchestra, many times the melodies traded off among different parts of the orchestra at different octave levels. So you can, wherever go down and do like so and everything. So, all right. Or you can always try be fancy and do concerto style, right? And basically, sometimes you can just hit a big chord and go up and da on a big one. And occasionally do something like that. Let's see if we got some more of these. Let's see. That's my last group of these. I've got some others. Any questions about any of those, or do you want to look at some hymns and on the spot look at some different ways to improvise what we might do? You want to pick another hymn?
Rejoice the Lord is King.
Or let's rejoice the Lord is King. What number is that?
171.
We're getting all these changes all the place. Well, let's see if we can cut it down. Rejoice. Was that the same? Honestly, I've ever
know
seen
that too.
that arrangement of that
Well,
particular one.
go crown him with many crowns.
Okay, there we go. All right. So let's think of all the ways we might
that's-
do
that's
to do this. Of course, this one lends itself very good to the big styles. We can always use these big octaves that go down.
Just something that I do
Sure.
anytime he's talking about God being king, or like crowning with many crowns, I always throw in some triplets.
Okay, like a fanfare-ish thing.
Yeah.
So you're trying to go.
Or not till you get to the
Yeah, very good. Now you can change this in different styles. We can do it more of a easy going. Now I noticed the chords moving a lot here. Now maybe on some of these styles we can think, well, how can we simplify the chords? Now I'm not one real big on dumbing down chords because I like to have every single chord and every extra thing you can think of to throw in there. But the reality is, in a lot of our, if you start doing things with some contemporary groups or some guitars, it sort of works better in a lot of ways to have a chord that goes over a little bit longer time. So let's just think. I'm looking at I'm looking wrong. Now I don't do lots of arpeggios and stuff. Now some people, when you think about improvisation, they're thinking about doing these big, things and all that. And when I think about or adding to it, I don't see doing things that are like wow, every once in a while. But let's see. I'm keep on this song and not that song. So. I can do I don't have to change the chord there because sometimes in these contemporary songs, even though that G we know and it kills us to think about it, that it clashes with this F. And a lot of these contemporary songs, they just let it fly. Anyway, let's find one that doesn't move as much and everything, even though I like that one. What's another thing we can do? Grace by Faithfulness? What number is that? Is that it?
I don't know.
And I was showing a little bit, I think it was yesterday, or it may have been this morning. I'm going to show two. How many of y'all were in here this morning? Anyone? All right, we had a couple in here. I'd like to show as we're doing this some of the arranging things about maybe going over the flat 6 and the flat 7 and some of those to sort of show you how you can use on these songs. In fact, let me show it on this song while we're doing this. A lot of times when you're doing this hymn improvisation, what we like to do is at the end, the beginning, do something dramatically different in the harmony that makes it appear that we've got some fancy arrangement when it's just us playing, in a sense. So there's a lot of places you can go in chord substitutions, but one thing you can always go on the end is when it goes to the tonic, you can go to the flat 6. And when I say that, I'm saying the 6th note of the scale that's lowered and then turned into a major chord, okay? And some people would go from that flat 6 to the flat 7, which would be the 7th note of the scale, and the key of D to be a C, turned into a major chord, and then winding back up on the D, okay? Now, I'm thinking that out loud and saying it because I'm just going to play it. Because if you know something works, then you can just play it, you know it's going to work, and then you do it, all right? So I'm going to B flat, C, and D in this song. And then I'm going to show you some other web places you could go to and also. All right, so... So basically I went to the flat 6, flat 7, meaning it's the 7th note lowered to turn into a major, so flat 6, and then the D. Okay? Now also where I like to go probably even more frequent than that, I like to go to the flat 6 and then go to the 4 and turn it into a minor. And then sometimes what I'll do is go back to the 1 and suspend it for the grand amen before resolving it, all right? So in a sense what I'm doing, if you were thinking about your classical theory, is I'm borrowing chords from the minor key. Because if I was looking at the key of D minor, the 6th chord in the key of D minor would be a B flat. The 4th chord in the key of D minor would be a G minor. And then I'm going to go straight to a D suspended, which means I'm leaving out the 3rd and going to play the 4th instead. So let's see if that works. See if you like that. So. Like a big ending. Now I don't have to be fancy in my playing to make it still feel big. I'm sort of overdoing it a little bit. So it's just the same effect. A very, very easy little trick to do. And also at the end, you can always do like a deceptive cadence. Repeat the phrase. Deceptive cadence theory, people, that goes to where? Where does that go?
6.
The 6, all right? So. Where's the 6 at? What note is that? B minor. You hear that all the time. Da. Now, if I want to be sort of like off in another world, when I get to that final chord, instead of coming down the tonic, I can go up to the 6, but this time I'll make the 6 a major. Let's see what happens. And if I get lucky, I'll do both of them. Where's that one? I think I'm in the key of what, D? Does that make sense? So I'm going back to 1. Now I have to go up to the 3rd of the key in the melody to make this work. You know. All right. So sometimes that just gives us sort of a different type of effect. Or you're figuring out in your hand. I thought you were asking. Okay. Trying to think some other tricks that I use, a lot. Of course, you can always do chord substitutions on stuff. Like, let me think of an example. Well, before I do that, let's pick another hymn, another key. Let me show you, make this work in another key, those things I just showed you. And then I'm going to show some other hymn variations. We got time, right? We're doing good stuff.
Abide with me.
About me. What
That's
number?
what I opened that.
Well, there we go. We're thinking
272.
alike.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful song. I need to arrange some of
Good,
these.
very very much.
272?
Right.
Yeah, beautiful song. So this is in E flat here. So, all right, so if what was the other one was in D. So this is in, so let's think what would be the flat 6 of E flat? C flat, or we can think of it as B, the one, but it's be C flat. All right, so C flat, and what would be the flat 7 of that? Would be D flat. D flat. So if you know these things work, you don't have to play it. You can just be sure. If you're sure you're on the right chord, so I'm gonna go to C flat, same thing, B major in harmonic, and then I'm gonna go to D flat and E flat. And I can do the same pattern I did a while ago. I can go to that B flat, C flat major, and take it down. What will be the 4 of that? It'll be A flat what? Minor, right? So let's see. Now I can also on these things, I can start on the, instead, what's the amen chord? The amen chord is what, the 4? Well, I could land on the 4 and sort of walk down in the chords to get back to the end there. Then I could go back to the 5, suspend it, resolve it, and then we're ready to be. See, lots of your choices. And if you did jazz stuff, there's a whole slew of other type of things. If you wanted more contemporary, styles like that. So yes.
Is that written somewhere what you just did?
Yes.
Is there a nice?
I think I've got some of these up here. Let me see. I've got one on how to end well. Let me see.
Is there, can we go somewhere?
Yeah.
to find
Now, let me
it?
give you. I don't know if I gave you this, but I passed. Some of you have gotten these before, but I've got some sheets that has some like contact information on that. If you haven't gotten these, has a place. Who need okay. So and they. I have some place where you can find my music. I've got on Sheet Music Plus, I've got probably 1,600 compositions, that are up there, mostly original, but a lot of hymn arrangements, a lot of original stuff. But on my website, jamesmstevens.com, there's a page on there, right when you go to it, on the left, that will say like free improvs and downloads. And on that page, I have a lot of PDFs that I use, including the one I showed.
These things that
Yes,
you're doing.
and you don't have to sign up. Nobody ever see. You just click it. It doesn't cost anything. I just put them up there, sort of as a service and everything.
Great.
So let me see if I can show. Let's see.
Would you do something real quick?
What
Would you
now?
just repeat the chord progression you just said? Was 1 1 6 2 7 5 1?
Yeah. The 1 the 1 6, and then the
Oh, not 1 6, a 6.
go to the what was
the
that?
minor 6.
Go the minors.
Okay, got it.
Say it again.
Can you
I
say it
didn't
again?
get it.
Which one is that? No, I'll do it again. Which?
The step down, what you're talking about, going from the 4 to the first inversion.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So let's pick another hymn, and I'll do it. Then I'll say it when I'm doing it. What's another hymn in another key? Just to put the heck out of it. Amazing Grace. How about that in G? We all know that. So so the 4 would be C. The 1 in first inversion means the G chord with a B in the bass. And then the A minor 7 would be the 2. And then the 5 suspended, resolving to the 5. And then we'd be back to the 1. Back to the 1. Okay. So, yeah, so it's an easy thing to do. Now as you're doing this, you can throw in some open 2s like that, and that'll even sound cooler. And then flat 7, flat 9 on the. And then maybe suspend the 2. There's all kinds of things, but when you're doing these things, if think about what you're doing. If you see something that's sort of cool in arrangement, you think you play Marquet's thing, and you think, well, I just love the way that sounds. Well, ask yourself, well, what did he do? What did he do? Ask the numbers, just like you're asking, right now. 1 goes to the 4. What's the progression? It goes to the 1 over the with in first inversion, the 1 over the 3 in the bass to the 2, and 2 loves to go to 5, and they go to 5, and I like to suspend them sometimes, resolve it, and then just come peacefully back to where you want to be.
It starts with a major 4,
You can, yeah.
but it can also work with a minor 4, or not.
Well, let's look at another way you can do this. Since you mentioned that, let's do a major 4, then let me go to a minor 4, and then we'll end it. That'll work too. That'll work every time as well. Yeah, so that will work too. All kinds of tricks. They're all smoke and mirrors, but you gotta find out sort of what they are and write some of them down, some of what you want to try, and you'd be surprised if you just put it to work. And on these hymns, I mentioned this in some of these other conferences. In our hymn books, there's not that many different keys anymore. I mean, it's rare you'll see something go past A flat, maybe 1 or 2 D flats in the hymnal. It's rare that you'll get anything in A. It's probably only on G and D. So time you work out a few of these in one key, you've got it a long ways. Now the one that I like to do with that flat 6, that works very well as a false key modulation. A false, where you're pretending like you changed keys, but you didn't. What's the advantage of that for your congregation? They feel good about going high, but they didn't. But you didn't hear that awful note because it's one note faster, rang like on the Amazing Grace, So I got down to, what's the verse before the last one, whatever. What now? What is it?
Too many dangers.
Too many dangers. Whatever it is. Get to the. And it's like everybody, yes, we've stepped up to another place, but you're right where you were. So because a lot of times when you go down that A flat, it's because, if we go down to that E flat, it's because we want to do this. We really do go up. Because when we go down that E flat, that's the dominant of A flat. So for a moment in time, because most people, when you hear you going down there, you think you're going up. But when you go down to the C minor, you're really just staying in the key. But you're just borrowing the chords from G minor, and everything.
So what was that non-modulation?
The non-modulation, it is simply, it's the flat 6 in any key. And I'll show it to you in many keys you won't see it. The minor 4, and the suspended 5. All right? So let's think of other hymns. Think of some hymns in other keys, or just tell me. And
Oh God, our help in ages past.
Oh, what?
Key of C.
Key of C. What now?
320.
320. Okay. Did it feel like I went up? I mean, it's sort of, it gives that, it's how you approach it and how you play it and everything. So, I turn. Yeah.
So 5 stuff's never really doesn't resolve. Or it doesn't sound like it resolves.
Yeah, when I think I mentioned it, I think when you were in is, I rarely like going to the 5/7 chord. I just think that's an in-your-face chord that's not all that beautiful unless you're playing blues. And then all of a sudden, it's pretty. All right, but as far as just doing, it's not as pretty as me. So many times I'll do the suspended on the 5 instead, and not. If I add, and it doesn't have to resolve like that. Bum, 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 bum. See, you didn't feel disappointed if it didn't resolve. That almost pushes it. That almost lets your resolution be where you move. If I, a lot of times I will resolve, but we don't. I don't have to get there to make you feel happy. I mean, you're okay if I just do that and everything. Yeah. So let me show you a little bit of this other one here, and I do have one on ending well. That let me see this. Got so many of these things. By the way, Mark Hayes has got some stuff on his website too. That's free downloads if you want to use some stuff that's going the wrong way. There's that one. And all this stuff I'm showing, I've got up and everything. Okay, here's. Okay, here it is. Okay. All right, so here's a thing looking like a River Dolores. All right, that's another hymn that we all probably have used in churches and everything. Can y'all see that okay? All right, here's the first one I just always show. Just exactly like it is in the hymn. And once again, as the other one, I can make big octaves. But on something like this, what works really well is to emphasize, since I see the note going here, notice what on the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to take that note an octave lower, and then I'm going to let an arpeggio follow that over the first one. So. And because they've got the first note is repeated, there's no reason I have to pound that note again for it. I mean, if I hit it the first time, I find that easy to do. You know, it's very easy to follow and everything. And then here, some little repeated figures. And so, now here's an example when I was talking about taking the melody low on these things. You'd be surprised at how simple that is and how good that sounds on even with the organ, with the congregation. You know, just that if you've got a decent piano. You know, if you've got an old clunker upright that's that's way out of tune, it won't have the same effect. But if you got a nice piano, that will sound really nice. Okay, look at okay. Now this next one, what I was showing here, is showing what I mentioned a while ago, this sort of orchestral effect about switching registers. Just like what I just started on the other lines, and then pick it up with a pattern. And then jump to another register. Not all that hard to do, and if you let your mind allow you to do that, it's pretty easy. Now the next one is you can use this in a lot of melodies as a cascading line. You just take the first note of the melody and let it come down to wherever it is on the scale, and just try that. Let me glasses or something. Very easy to, even if you don't do that much on a lot of things, you can just follow a melody down on a chord that's held, especially if it's a repeated chord. And of course, that's in these boom chick patterns. But on some of these other ones, look at the one that's the next to the bottom. This is what they call a Broadway boom chick. Real easy sometimes to put an inner line, like a cello. Then with the chick, the boom chick and the melody. Here we go. But you don't have to. Most of the time, it'd be better not to have the melody in on that. In fact, the more people you got playing in a praise band or something like that, the less you need anybody to play the melody. If you got a song everybody knows the melody, there's no reason for 7 instrumentalists to be whacking away at it. You know, it just gets in the way. And besides, most of the time, your worship leader is going to know the melody. You know, if they need help them out. But if not, then do things that sort of support the melody and not do the other. So, all right, now this one is where I'm just showing just some different harmony changes. But notice what I also do in the bass. How did the bass change as far as the note? It's just a pedal tone. Many times on the hymn, you can find a note in the bass that you can for a half of a song or something, just let that same note. So instead of going feel like I've got to change with that, then it has something cool sound. Then you might alter with all kinds of ways we can alter the harmonies. You have to watch out for in the parallel minor if you use that, and that is how many of you remember in your studying your theory the 3 forms of a minor scale? You've got the natural minor scale, which is the exact same thing as the Aeolian mode. We've got the harmonic minor scale, which is like the natural minor, but it changes what note? And we've got the melodic minor, the raised 6 of them going up and coming down. And the reason we have to have these other 2, and the reason those are 2 so important, is that in true minor, as opposed to a modal field, in true minor, the 5/7 harmony, the 5/7, the 7th note is raised, so we can have a dominant chord. All right, so don't make the mistake of if you try to do it in a minor key where you go. You know how that sounds? See, there's the real minor feel. And then I get back to the C chord. I don't do that. Do not change that to the there. That'll also be true if you use the 7 diminished, the secondary leading tone. And you know, try it as well and everything. Now look at this next example. What I want to show you here, as I mentioned a little earlier, and we're about running out of time, but let me just get to this next thing. A lot of times you can spice up hymns using 3rds and 6th. All right. Now we can use 4ths and 5ths, but if we have used 4ths and 5ths, we will get some other kind of sounds that aren't the traditional ones that go with the hymns. But sometimes I'll use that. So are those 6 3rds, 6, 6 3rds, and then 6 3rds. If I used 4ths, let's listen to it. Let's see. I can do it. You know, it doesn't have the same smooth sound. So in our harmonies, now in the medieval time and Renaissance time, the sounds of the open 4ths and the 5ths were the preferable sounds. It was really only in the Renaissance, we got the time of Palestrina, and around that time, where the 3rds and the 6ths became the more pleasing, the more acceptable consonant type sounds. So now that works best with our harmonies always. So as a rule, if you want to do melodic things and do some fancy things, just find either the 3rds that work according to where the melody is in the scale, or the 6ths that work, and then you'll always come out right. Then I got some other. There may be a few ending ones here on this. Let me see. I think we're about out of time. No, that may have been the last one. Okay. Well, all of these things, that one is up on my site where you can download it for free if you wanted to get some of these things, just sort of look at them. But I hope today that I've at least given you some ideas and some things to try. I mean, nothing is like over the top brilliant, but it's just a matter, if you can think what it is, if you can write it down like you're doing, and then actually go to some of these keys and try it out, you'll be surprised how easy it is once you get it under your hands and do it, and how pleasing it'll be for people to hear, and for you to do something that's creative and has a little variety in it.